Well, that took a little longer than anticipated. Hate when that happens, but it does happen sometimes. But hello, everyone. We are back with another Friday live stream, which is always good. Been doing these for a long time, and I still enjoy them, which is a pretty good sign. Wonder how many Friday live streams we've done. Be interesting to count them up. Certainly dozens and dozens and dozens. Probably beyond 100 at this point, I'd say. Maybe more than that. Maybe well more than that. So, yeah, it's been a busy week, tiring week, but a good week. Work is finally starting to get into a groove. Not completely stable yet, but the schedule's a little more solid this week. I was not able to get to the drawing inward this Monday. I was just frankly blasted. I planned to do the drawing stream, but I kind of zoned out all day. Hey Matt, good to see you. Hey Jay, and yeah, so it's one of those strange weeks in terms of like things aren't all that different, but you still feel different. Things don't quite work out the same pace. You're not in the same place you are. A slightly Twilight Zone kind of experience, where it's like, going to work at pretty much the same time. But hey Gene, happy Friday. Happy Friday to all of you. But yeah, back to things. Actually, it's funny. Some of the students the other day walked past them as they were looking up some stuff. We're teaching them web development, and I noticed some colorful screens that had certain color palettes. I was like, that doesn't look like a web. Doesn't look like a business website. That looks like anime artwork. And they were talking about one of them was recommending Dororo to one of the other ones, and I was like, oh yeah, I crouched down next to them and was like, oh, is that Dororo? And you could see their eyes get really wide initially because they're like, oh no, we got caught. And then he's like, wait, he knows what we're talking about? I was like, yeah, it's a great show. And they're like, oh, good. And we went back to our stuff. But I think they now know, certainly. I also used this really weird Lane animated GIF for one of the lessons this week. So I think they all know, if they're curious, that I had that particular interest. If any of them share it, it doesn't seem to be that this week, but that's okay. Trying to remember what I watched since last time we got together. I believe some more Dororo than last time. I'm I think 4 or 5 episodes in. Loving that show. Impressive work all around. Otherwise, I've been watching stuff on Netflix. Finished Samurai Gourmet. And I think what else. There's a neat Netflix series, not anime related just yet, but it's called The Toys That Made Us. It's about various toy lines of the 20th century. So Barbie, He-Man, Star Wars, G.I. Joe. And I've been watching that and finding it very interesting. And it wouldn't be weird to go to a class and it's, oh, that's Brent. How odd. But yeah, we don't really get a chance to talk about those things much, sadly, in class. They're definitely busy. They've got plenty on their plates. But yeah, that was pretty cool. But pardon me, I don't know why I'm yawning so much. Well, I guess it was a kind of a long week. Looking forward to the weekend. Hoping to get a hike in, get some time to myself, but also to relax a bit. Do want to do an anime club tomorrow. We'll see how that goes. It might be a shorter one than normal, just kind of to get back into the swing of things, without doing a whole 3-hour block. But we'll see. So, before I forget, let me pull up the Amane news of the week. Yeah, when does that start? The Evangelion license on Netflix. Wonder if it'll be different at all. Wonder if they've got some New weird. Oh, that's weird. ANN isn't loading for me. I wonder if they have any tweak to the license that they'll be covering. We cover basically software, web development online. So making websites, front end, back end, so databases and servers and all that kind of stuff. So that's kind of that. That's loading. What's up with ANN? It's just me? I can load up other websites. That's strange. So yeah, it's programming. It's a little bit of DevOps. So managing the systems you set up, that kind of stuff. I taught particularly CSS, cascading style sheets, this week. So it's basically how to style a page, how to apply colors and layouts and such. Just a fun. There it is. There it is. Let's see here. Live action video girl I. Cool. Just announcing people. Announcing cast. A lot of video game news, at least for today. Yeah, not seeing a lot of other interesting stuff. I'm gonna start diving into some of the TV and rankings and such. That might be the most. That might be the most important stuff. Obviously, we saw. I mean, this isn't really anime related, but or not directly anime related. But the new Pokemon game was announced. That looks fun. Might end up playing that. Now that I've played some Pokemon Let's Go, I'm like, okay, I get the feel of this. I know what I'm getting into with a Pokemon game. It's not one of those things where I'm not blown away by Pokemon. I'm not like, oh my gosh, this is the greatest thing. This is my life. But they are legitimately fun, sort of light entertainment experiences. Sidebar and ANN, ranking the films of Satoshi Kon, because that's a useful exercise to rank art. One of the most artistic of our directors. Let's insist that some of his are bad. Yeah, look at some of the releases. New venue for Akon. Interesting. Yeah, not really seeing much remarkable news-wise here. Someone takes like a cultural prize nominees announced. Funimation licenses. Random stuff. Battle Angel Alita makes $62 million in China opening weekend. That's good. Sounds like a pretty decent opening to me. More cast members for Bebop and Others. Yeah, not really exciting. That's weird. I see two different notes for. Oh, okay. So $20 million opening day in China, $62 million opening weekend. This is Fox's biggest opening ever in China. Wow. Also a record for IMAX openings in China for Fox. Also the largest IMAX opening ever in China in February. Okay. Let's see here. And lots of other numbers here, but they're not really giving us much context in the ANN article. Not shocking. Production budget of $200 million. Cumulative total of $263 million worldwide. Good. Tax credits of $30 million. Not seeing where those tax credits are from. But yeah, good. Hopefully Alita will not be a flop. It's always sad when these things just completely die. I hope it at least makes enough for folks to say, okay, we can make, we can do those things. We can make those. Not a bad thing. Okay. So it needs to break even at around. Um, so Fox has stated the film needs to make around $400 million plus or minus to break even, which is what estimates are currently aiming at. So, okay. Not a huge moneymaker, but yeah. So, Samantha Cultural Prize nominees include Areyo Hoshikuzu from Kadokawa, which looks like a World War II manga. Umemachi Diary, Astro Lost in Space. Haven't heard of any of these, no shock. Promise Neverland. That's cool. Umemachi Diary, they're calling out on ANN. About a group of sisters whose absent father just passed away. So sort of a family drama, looks like. Interesting. Huh. Last year, Golden Kamui won the grand prize as a point of comparison. Okay, so hopefully Alita will do okay. Let's see here. I got some video game news, but let's start with more anime-related stuff. So Japan's animation TV ranking for February 18th to 24th is exactly what you'd expect. Besides the usual suspects, we've got One Piece on top at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. At 6, number 6, Ace Attorney Season 2, Gegege no Kitaro, cool. Precure, Curious George, and Oshiri Tante. So no shock there. North American anime and manga releases. For anime releases, fairly random stuff. Some Galaxy Express, Garo the Vanishing Line, Just Because, Kino's Journey. Cool. I assume this is the new one. Just double check that. Oh no, this is the original. Cool. The 2003 series. Huh, didn't know that was being released. Cool. Gundam Unicorn, Blu-ray disc, complete edition, the import. Wow. So you can buy the import Momosu Gundam Unicorn Blu-ray disc box complete edition, retailing at $599.99. I'm a fan of Gundam, but no. Twilight of the Cockroaches back on DVD. Awesome. I may have to grab a copy of that. Yokai Watch Season 1. Let's see here. Manga releases Ancient Majesty's Bride 10, which I may need to buy. Berserk, Harlock Classic Collection 3, Clockwork Planet, Fate Zero 8, I'm a Hero 9, Maiden Abyss 5, Miss Kobayashi's Dragon Maid 1. This is Elma's Office Lady Diary, whatever that is. Pandora and the Crimson Shell 11. That keeps going on. To Love Root Darkness, plus a lot of digital manga releases. Interesting. Ace of Diamond 20. Ancient Majesty's Bride, Baki, Boy and the Beast 1 through 4. Yeah, most of those things are also digital releases. Not a big shock. Prison School. The 5 centimeters per second, One More Side novel is out, as are the light novels digitally for How Not to Summon a Demon Lord 7, Infinite Shadow 6, Jinro 3. Oh, this is not Jinro as in the Wolf Brigade. Jinro as in Der Werewolf. And Kokoro Connect novel 4. Cool. Release of the Nier Automata Game of the Yorhak edition. That's cute. Well done. Cool. So video game stuff. Japanese video game rankings for the past week. Anthem at top. That's surprising. New Super Mario Brothers U Deluxe at number 2. Super Smash Brothers Ultimate at number 3. Nier Automata Game of the Yorha Edition, number 4. Jump Force at 5. Even given all of the concerns, Jump Force sold 17,000 copies. Kingdom Hearts 3, Far Cry New Dawn, Pokemon Let's Go, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, Super Mario Party, Minecraft, Breath of the Wild, still selling. That's crazy. They sold over 7,000 copies of Breath of the Wild, a game that came out, what, 2 years ago? Jeez. That's amazing. I mean, and it's not Minecraft, where Minecraft is basically a, Minecraft is a platform. It's not really a game. Yes, hey Spin2Win. There will be a live stream tomorrow. Not sure how long. Not sure if I can manage 3 hours tomorrow, but we're gonna see what I can do. Also, I should mention I am thinking of shifting the schedule around a little bit. I just realized streaming Mondays and Wednesdays and Fridays and Saturdays splits up my week a lot. So I think I'm going to do the same shows, but I might move like drawing to Wednesdays or Fridays or something, so I can just kind of bunch things up a little bit, and I'm not, having to do things and then break for stream and then do something else. It's a little one of the reasons I've had a tough time keeping the schedule is just because it's like, God, every day I've got a new thing to do. And I can't get other stuff done as a result. So, not sure, but I'll do a video or something about that. So, it is interesting looking at this. Nothing's shocking there. About all the stuff over in Japan that we never get, and the question of how we could actually make an impact there, right? How could we get some of that stuff over here in America? And we talked about how you can make stuff. Yeah, I'll post a video, Jay, definitely, if I change up the schedule. Because there's all sorts of cool stuff out there. Hey, DSLag. So what are some things that you guys have come across? Whoa, hello. There we are. What are some things that you come across that are not licensed over here, that seem unlikely to get licensed over here, but that you wish we'd get a really good high quality release of? Maybe some manga, maybe some anime. I'd love to see Angel's Egg released over here in America in a really nice, crisp Blu-ray release. That's just such an interesting film. Such a weird film. Obviously, Quiet Country Cafe. I think I'm now required to mention that every week at this point. In terms of manga, there's a really interesting manga I was reading a while back about a man and a woman who are members of this really bizarre cult. They've been sent to this island by the cult to do something, and as you read, you realize, oh, they're gonna blow something up, aren't they? And they don't even know what they're gonna do, but it's sort of this exploration of cult activities, which was really interesting. I never got to the end of it, but that was really interesting. Okay, Mad Max is coming together. Good to hear. Good to hear. I'm a big fan of those of the Noir Mad Max El Cujador trilogy, and I'm glad to hear that's coming together. I wonder if Alito will prompt a lot more interest in the manga. Castaway Iron Island. Harem show, looks like. Or harem manga. I mean, at least in basic premise. Interesting. That looks fun. Rude 39. Planet is absolutely aimed at adults, squarely. Even more so than a lot of stuff out there. A Pachinko Pro on the Run. That's fun. You're right. That is a very difficult, very hard sell over here in Japan. Over here in Japan. over here in America. Whoa, that is. I need some. Wow. Hold on. Trying to get an idea of the art style here. Manga Reader just keeps giving me either just come on, Manga Reader. Oh wow, that's very Kaji. Is that the huh? No, it doesn't look. I mean, vaguely like Kaji. Wow, that's a weird one. Definitely. Huh? Looks fun. Yeah, I mean, I remember watching Planet Test, and that's one of those things where I was like, wow, this isn't even aimed at like older teenagers. This is clearly aimed at like people in the working world because it's very much about that vibe of things. And there's clearly a lot of like thoughtful world building. Haven't finished Planet Test. Want to do it one of these days. Maybe one of these days I'll have like a free weekend to do so. Mm, imagine that. Hmm. Yeah, I'd say harem concept is more what I meant, as opposed to harem, actual harem storyline. But just guys surrounded by girls. Yeah, there's not that much in anime that's really truly aimed at adults, and obviously, it's not H. But stuff that's where it's like, yeah, this isn't really appealing to teenagers as much. I think Ghost in the Shell and pretty much all versions is aimed at that older audience. Um, there's not that much. Yeah, totally. And even I mean, the gory stuff and the etchy stuff is well, the gory stuff in particular is usually actually aimed at a younger audience. Like it's actually aimed at like teenagers, because frankly, not a lot of 30-year-olds go to the movies to watch gore. It's really usually older teens and young adults who are consuming the gory stuff. Um, I was thinking about this recently. How one of the difficulties is getting into something that is so niche. You think of about a manga about a pro pachinko player. It's sort of a niche of a niche of a niche of a niche over here in America. That's a really rough one. You're watching this documentary about toys. One of the things about He-Man is that it was designed to have as broad of an appeal as possible, to have to be as iconic as possible, like He-Man. There we go. And that's just something that we don't get with a story of a 14-year-old boy who is shipwrecked on an island with populated entirely by girls, but it's not like a sex comedy. Just gosh, no one understands that. Dead Leaves, yeah, that is a trip. Have I seen Dead Leaves? Like I know I'm familiar with it. I remember, I know the art style. Um, I think I've seen. Let me pull up some images. Oh, oddly enough, if you Google image search Dead Leaves, you get images of just dead leaves. Um, Gosh, I can't remember. It seems to me I've seen Dead Leaves, but it was a long, long time ago. Hmm. Hard to tell. It's another great example of something where it's like, yeah, that is something that is definitely aimed at the adult crowd. Especially as I pull up the, wow, even if I search of moderate, I got that. That's pretty crazy. I guess, did I really see it when I'm just scrolling back? Yeah, sure enough. Well, those boobs made it past the censors. Hmm. Interesting. 2003? Yeah. Yeah, re-release counts, I think. Especially if it's sort of fallen by the wayside. I think Hiroyuki Imaishi and Misaki Iwasa are two big, um, what would you call it, absurdists? Um, I don't know. weird, definitely creators in terms of they definitely create weird stuff. Spectre Man. I'm not familiar with Spectre Man. What's Spectre Man? Spectre Man. Tokusatsu TV series. Gotcha. 1971. First major superhero show of the 70s. Which was dubbed and syndicated in 78. Huh. Excuse me. Pardon me. Oh, okay. I'm going to need to blow my... Pardon. Excuse me. Moha. Wow. You ever have that thing where you sneeze and you're like, oh my gosh, like all the mucus in my body is now in my nose? That's what just happened. Oh, golly. Okay. Pardon. Excuse me. Pardon me. Excuse me. So, you may have seen Brain Matter. Okay. Cool. Picked up Yakuza 1. Yeah, I've been playing, well, I played some of Yakuza Kiwami. Obviously, haven't finished it yet. Would like to go back and finish that at some point. I hear what you're saying, Matt. I think I'm with you. I like his art style, but well, actually, I'm kind of, I don't know. I don't know that I like his stories. I find his stories, always stick with me. Like, I don't forget them quickly, and the art style helps with that. It's just that his approach to storytelling seems to be very fly by the seat of the pants, just throw things together. Certainly Mind Game feels like it's just a bunch of stuff, and I think that was an adaptation of something. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, Yakuza feels like it's a game about adults doing adult things, but it's not about adults, hitting each other with with crowbars and brain matter, and or screwing each other in multiple senses of the word. And it's a game that I think a younger audience can certainly consume and understand and appreciate. Right? It's not like a 15-year-old couldn't play or understand Yakuza, but it is certainly, like you said, you feel like you're an adult. Yeah, Dragon Quest XI, amazing, and they're doing the actual orchestral soundtrack as opposed to everything else. And also, so okay, let's talk video games for a bit. So this week was announced. Oh, Yakuza is definitely tamer than GTA. But then GTA, I think, is not necessarily aimed at an adult audience. I think GTA is aimed at kind of that older teen audience that thinks being adult is running around in a fast car and all that stuff. So they announced this week this thing that I've been thinking about quite a bit. They didn't announce. There are strong rumors this week that Xbox Live will be able to stream to the Nintendo Switch. So anything that is Xbox Live streamable, you'll be able to play on a Switch. I personally think that was that cloud streaming was one of the features intended for the Switch from the get-go. I think it's why it's not. It's why they never made a big deal about specs and power. And granted, Nintendo consoles rarely have been, all about the specs. But I think when they were designing this, they were like, we're going to be doing, cloud streaming of games in the future anyway. Like that, this is coming fairly soon. And so I think it makes a lot of sense for them to design something that where the specs aren't that big of a deal because you're going to be streaming everything. You can just, stream all your games to this little tablet device or stream it to a, console thing. This is a perfect streaming device. So I think that is where they were going with that. I think that was a major intent of the architecture of the Switch. And so if this does work, I think that'll be a huge, huge deal. And it'll let you do, I think, a lot of things because suddenly now, if you, do a GoldenEye 64 remaster, you don't have to worry about what it runs on. You just run it on whatever, and then just stream it to whatever console you want. I think that is ideal, and that really again ties into, I think, the Nintendo philosophy, where we have all these amazing games, and we want you to just be able to play them. And it doesn't really make sense to have this beefy console versus this handheld. That just you really have to design completely different games for those platforms. Now you have this one little thing, and then you can, which can be, powerful enough to run a decent console game, but anything you just stream to it. We have not finished Ergo Proxy. We will probably watch more Ergo Proxy next week, or tomorrow rather. I kind of want to ease back in with something a little more fun. Let me just pull up Crunchyroll and see, is there anything on Crunchyroll right now that we could watch, maybe like a movie or an OVA that we could watch tomorrow? The headline in Crunchyroll is, if you thought Boogie Pop and Others was strange, this week's episode only proves how strange things can actually get. I wonder what they're pulling in storyline-wise. Let me just scroll down. I'm seeing episode 13, episode 14. Interesting. I gotta start planning for the next seasonal anime watching stream, too. Let's see here. Let's just go to shows real quick. Will the VR headset be more relevant to the future of anime watching? Interesting question. I think it'd be really interesting. So here's the problem, is that I think we are a very long ways away from VR video content, in the sense that you're watching something, like a 3D, like a VR movie, where it is a rolling video material, but it's 360 degrees, just because what if something happens back there that you're supposed to notice, right? You can't be watching everything, and that becomes a really difficult thing with attention and with stuff going on. So I think we're going to be a long ways away from something that is, that turns that into a must-have experience. That said, I mean, you can certainly watch anime in a VR headset. They have video players in VR, and it just seems like a little over the top, a little unnecessary in terms of how to watch anime. It's like just showing up on a screen. Excuse me. So I disagree with you there, DS Lite, because I think the internal storage actually isn't that small, unless you're like a hardcore gamer. There are a lot of folks I know who use internal storage and never have an SD card there, and they're fine. But also, I think the SD card is just like an external hard drive, because I think, all the consoles right now have external hard drives, right? And a lot of people, I have an external hard drive in my PS4, and I know a lot of people do that. So I think it's just like that. You just plug an extra thing in there for extra storage. So I don't think it's really a step back. I think it's a feature parity. But yeah, I don't think the VR headset will impact anime that much. Now, granted, I do, there's a guy in Japan where he's just replaced all of his video stuff with a VR headset. He watches all of his movies that way. All of his content is there. Well, yeah, games are getting bigger in size these days, but that's true of all consoles. You know, all consoles are also getting bigger. Hard, you know, that's just a feature. Um, but yeah, so this guy just he watches everything in VR. I think that would be an interesting thing if folks just sort of you know switched out all of their video stuff, basically other than your phone, with a VR headset. It kind of makes sense. Then you can see all this stuff. Um, so that could be an interesting connection with things. Who knows? I could also see some anime being made that is, um, for lack of a better term, immersive CGI anime. So imagine a CGI series where you are standing in the scene. It's not necessarily interactive, but you sit there. You're standing there in the scene as it's playing out. I think that has some potential too. If you had anime style characters and you're sitting there watching stuff, but then you can move around the scene. You can see what's going on, explore stuff. I think that'd be an interesting idea. As with so many things, I think we're a long ways away from that being compelling because it takes so long for folks to, figure out the best ways to do things. Um, yeah, I'm trying to think. I mean, there've got to be some VR enabled MMOs, right? VR MMO. There's an Orbis VR fantasy virtual reality MMO for the Vive and the Oculus. There's literally a VR MMO. There's a Ragnarok VR. Let's load up some of these things. See what we get. VR MMO. It's just a domain. There's not actually. I think. Okay, there's some basic information here, but it's not like there's nothing here really. Um, Ragnarok VR virtual reality remake of Ragnarok Online. Um, okay, so this is just somebody took the game's assets and did essentially standalone thing where you can wander around a Ragnarok Online world. Well, whatever. And Orbis VR, again, it's not on PS, so I can't really check that out. That'd be really cool, I think. I also think the hardcore gamers are they do cartridges. Pretty much all the hardcore gamers I know, they don't go digital. They buy they're I only buy cartridges because I want to be able to resell and all that stuff. So they don't worry about why would they worry about storage? And it is true. There are like a handful of games they don't fit on the Switch cartridge. So you have to actually a lot of them like you'll get most of it on the cartridge, but then you have to also download a couple of gigs, in addition to the cartridge when you actually start the game for the first time. So yeah, it'd be cool if you could do Switch VR. If the Switch were just slotted into a helmet, and then off you go. I always thought, or I didn't always think, but that does seem like a good idea, right? So we were on Crunchyroll, and we got distracted. That happens a lot on Crunchyroll. Do they have not a lot of filtering options on Crunchyroll? Let's do by genre. Let's try comedy. And see if there's anything short. Already done animated training. Looking for like an OVA or a movie that we could have fun with tomorrow. Doesn't have to be a comedy, but just something a little different and lighter in tone. Grave of the Fireflies, something like that. Aren't a lot of there are not a lot of comedy movies actually. Now that I think about it, a lot of TV shows, but not movies. Do 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 do. Part of the problem too is I don't know which of these are like ONAs or other like short things where it's like, these could be 3 minute long episodes. But who knows? No, not really seeing things. Again, there's no real way of. I'd love to like filter by length or sort by length, but I'm not seeing anything there, which is unfortunate. That is not true, Game Escape, for the Switch. The Switch does not require hard disk installation of games. Um, as I understand it, there's no. I mean, obviously, there's some setup on the for the OS to recognize that that thing is plugged in and so forth. Um, oh, I see what you're saying. So yeah, that um, folks who don't use the Switch are used to that. So that's true. I see what you're saying. Um, sure, we can talk about origin of the word otaku. I'm certainly not the world's foremost expert on that topic. Um, but otaku, as I understand it, started because um, anime fans in Japan were kind of weird and they used archaic forms of Japanese. And they would refer to themselves in this sort of kind of equivalent to us using sort of Renaissance speech with ourselves and saying, you know, ah, I see yonder comes our faithful comrade, and using that kind of speech with each other. In fact, if you watch Otaku no Video, like the actual thing that Gainax made, that's in there when he first sees the otaku in the elevator and he's interacting with them. They're actually one of the guys is speaking that way, and otaku was a Japanese word for house. I think archaic Japanese word for house, and so it was referred to kind of as I understand it. It was thus we will go back to our place, our house, the place where all the anime fans gather, that house. And thus otaku came to be used as a term for these anime fans. But then it broke out into the mainstream, if you will, as folks started using that term. Eccentric family, that's a thought. That's a good idea, J-Biz. I'm a few episodes into Eccentric Family, so I may just watch several more episodes of that, because you don't really need to have seen the previous episodes whenever you watch Eccentric Family. It's kind of like every episode is dropping you into an existing situation. So that's a good idea. I may do that. But yeah, when other folks get in, when folks outside of the anime fandom started noticing this fandom, that term was kind of in vogue, and so folks are using it to refer to anime fans, and not in a positive way. The otaku meant socially awkward, shut in, who only ever interacts with the world through anime and manga. And it was a pretty seriously negative connotation. And then you had the Miyazaki murders, and that definitely tarnished the reputation of the term, because folks thought that anime fans, certainly not all anime fans were like that, but that perhaps there was something dangerous going on. Perhaps there was something really bad about the fandom. And so you started getting this strange bifurcation where some people saw otaku as dangerous perverts, frankly, and others saw them as harmless but extremely obsessed people, sort of unhealthily obsessed perhaps, but ultimately harmless geeks, nerds, so to speak. And again, that's in Japan. And meanwhile, the term had come over to America where it didn't have those same connotations, so it became just a term for anime fan or manga fan, and it has that sort of general understanding and appreciation over here. But yeah, as far as I understand, in Japan, it's still, if you talk about otaku, a lot of folks in Japan will you'll have that kind of divisiveness in belief on the term, and it's a real thing, and it's an important thing. Like we should not forget that there's an otaku who did some very bad things, and that there are grimy corners of our hobby that can be very 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 disturbing, and we shouldn't ignore that. We should be aware of that and try to keep the hobby as safe and positive as possible. Well, it's not a witch hunt, Jay. That's the thing. Is that, again, it depends very much on who you talk to. And I think it also sometimes, or to some extent, falls along generational lines. I think older people think otaku are creepy perverts, but younger people who grew up with anime are much more forgiving of it. I figured you were talking about Vic. I, I don't. I mean, here's the problem. I don't want to get into gossip. I don't know Vic. I don't know the experiences that people have talked about. So I can't speak to that. I can't say, oh, what he did was wrong, because I don't know what he did. Right? I've seen the accusations, but I really don't want to get into all of that. And different voice actors interact with fans in different ways, right? I don't know. I don't want to shut down that topic, but I don't know really how to address it. Is the problem? One of the ways in which voice actors keep food on the table is by having a fan base that clamors for them to be, just Google it, Game Escape. It's that easy. As a voice actor, you need to be in demand, and one of the ways you can be in demand is by one of the ways to be in demand is by having fans who are talking about you on social media and who setting up fan clubs and so forth. And that's how you book more gigs, by being popular and successful and by having a fan base. So I don't think voice actors should not interact with fans. They need to do that. And you got to find the right ways of doing so. Appropriate ways of doing so. I don't. Key the Metal Idol's not that short. I mean, it's a 13-episode TV series plus 2 movies. So, yeah. I mean, and again, it's one of those things where I don't know. I can't say. A lot of the accusations are basically, he hugged me and I felt super uncomfortable. And I'm like, that doesn't mean that he was being creepy. It could just be that, he feels that hugging is a perfectly normal thing to do. And if he doesn't if nobody has told him, hey, people find hugging creepy, then why would he think that hugging is creepy? Right? But I don't know the context. I don't know how he did it. I don't know any of that stuff. So, who can say? I mean, it does seem to me, and now I am talking about it, that, like you say, I think Vic is an outgoing person and someone who grew up in a culture where hugging is normal, where that is just how you display normal, a hug is like waving to somebody on the street. That there are definitely places in the world where, and definitely subcultures where that is completely normal, and you can just grow up and that's just the way things are. It looks like that's what he's used to, but a lot of people found that weird. Now the other side of that coin is that, Funimation did an investigation and afterwards announced we are not casting Vic Mignogna in our shows anymore. Again, I don't know. I can't say. And the other problem is that, you know, I don't know who was involved in that investigation. I don't know what they looked at. I don't know if any of the people involved in here had some particular desires one way or the other. If there was, there are so many factors involved in something like this. Yeah, we don't know the full story. So, hard to say. Every time I've seen Vic at an event, and just, I have been at conventions where Vic Mignogna has been, and I've just, been walking through a hallway and seen him somewhere. He's never given off a creepy vibe, but that doesn't necessarily mean anything. Creepy people often don't give off a creepy vibe, and that doesn't mean that they are or aren't creepy. So who knows? And it is tough. Like I said, voice actors need fans. And so one other factor there, Vic also has a very strong and vocal young female fan base. And so he's always had to tread that line very carefully. So that's also another factor in there. Again, I don't know what that does to the situation one way or the other. And that is also, kind of one of the other things you got to deal with in here is that, you do get people, I've heard folks talk about how, girls would come up to, in the line and ask voice actors to, sign their breasts, for example. That is a thing voice actors have to deal with. So, fandom can be weird. Imagine that. So yeah, I don't know. And I just point that out because that means that Vic in particular has a fan base that really wants like personal physical affection from him, and not even necessarily in a creepy or inappropriate way, but like they would love a hug from Vic Mignogna. Like that is something that they find incredibly rewarding. So that also factors into it on both sides, where it could just be where he's like, look, this is what my fans want, but also could be like, maybe he's taking advantage of that. I don't know. Yeah, totally. Rock stars, musicians understand that. And Vic was certainly, a rock star at anime conventions. And granted, the rock industry certainly has a long tradition of taking advantage of that. So, movie industry as well. There's I don't go and watch Hollywood movies with certain very rare exceptions, partly because Hollywood has a long tradition of really taking advantage of women, and particularly very young women. That's a thing that's happened for decades and decades and decades. And yeah, that's not anything about Vic or voice actors in general, but it's just like that, people can do that. Yeah, well, Japan has a very long. Let me how to put this. Like you say, Japan has a much more locked down set of rules and expectations around fan interactions. So how you do events, how people interact with you, is pretty well known. I mean, it can vary very wildly. And they did have to change things after that. There was that knife attack on one of the girls in AKB48. Or was it Morning Musume? One of the two. And so, yeah, I mean, bad things can happen and that can change the rules. But it's, I think they have a lot more experience with this and a lot more experience with, well, and also just, with celebrity. Japan, and especially Japanese music culture, has had so many flash in the pan people. AKB48, thank you. all these pop idols that are huge for like 3 months. That there's a huge industry of folks who manage just that, who just manage the fan appearances and the social presence of these people. So they know how to do things. They know when to do handshakes, when not to do handshakes. That's cool. That is something I'd love to see. I'd love to see like South American anime culture start producing more material about South American anime fandom and the South American anime industry, because it is big. There've been a lot of anime released in South America, and people just don't talk about it. People just don't let the world know that that exists, which I think is a crying shame, because I think it's a very important part of anime history that we just don't hear about, and so we assume it never happens. But like, there's a statue to, I think, Mazinger in South America somewhere. I think Venezuela. Could be Brazil. One of the two. Well, some country in South America, I'm pretty sure. So yeah, I mean, it's big. These things are huge deals. But yeah. Yeah. It's one reason I'm glad I'm not that famous. I'm glad I never have to deal with that stuff of things. And you do hear horror stories of successful people who come back to their hotel room and found, like, a an underage girl has snuck into their room and is expecting them to do certain things, and it's like or young boys. That's cool. Yeah, I believe that totally. That when Dragon Ball was big in Portugal, folks would crowd around. Sure, totally. Yeah, popularity is not necessarily a good thing. A friend of mine today was telling me that Barbara Streisand, she built a mall in her basement. I'm sorry, she built a department store in her basement, because she loved going to the mall as a kid. Well, she didn't love going to the mall as a kid. Her parents were apparently not that fun to live with. And so they would go to the mall, and she could go to the department store while they basically fought. And so the department store became kind of her refuge. So she built, Barbara Streisand had a department store built in her basement where she can shop. She owns everything in the place, but they all have prices and things go on sale, and like she has people staff it and work there, and who like try to get her to buy things on sale even though she owns everything in there and they are her employees. And part of it is because Barbara Streisand cannot go to a shopping mall. She cannot go to a department store because she's Barbara Streisand and she'd be mobbed the entire time. So the only way she can do it is by replicating it in her own house. Wow. Like, that's pretty nuts. Hey, Daniel. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Oh, I'm sure there's anime bigger in Latin America than the U.S. Totally. I think like Super Robot hit harder in Latin America than in the U.S., if nothing else. Oh, cool. Yeah, Ramen and a Half. Sure. That'd be interesting to see, because Ramen and a Half was pretty big among anime fans, but if it aired on TV on like Cartoon Network, that would get that sort of broader fan base, that broader population watching it. Interesting to compare that. Yeah. And again, that's what a friend told me. I don't know how exactly accurate that is. But I think it's certainly indicative of the things that celebrities have to go to protect their sanity. Because they can't behave like normal people, because nobody else treats them like normal people, which is sad. Yeah, and, I mean, certainly if you go on YouTube and you start looking up like dubbed anime, there's a lot of it dubbed in like Brazilian Portuguese, and a lot of it dubbed in Spanish, and other languages like that because they were huge in those countries or subtitled. A lot of stuff subtitled in those languages. Yeah, Ramon Half is just not a and it's a show where you couldn't really. I mean, you could censor the nudity, but it would you'd have to do so much of it that it's just kind of like, okay, why are we doing this? Like, why are we trying with this show? And also, I think Ranma and Half just is it's a much harder sell to the average person. Like, it's not clearly aimed at kids. It's not clearly aimed at, martial arts fans because there's not that much martial arts in it. The comedy is very wacky, and it's definitely not really aimed at adults. So it's a hard sell in America, I think. Perfect for anime fans because we want the bizarre. And it's also a very Japanese show. Like there's a lot of, just Japanese culture in Ranma and Half. There's a lot of the house they live in and just the normal stuff about living there. So I think in again for otaku who love that stuff, then totally makes sense. But not so much to Topeka in America. Much as I love the American Midwest, don't get me wrong. I don't like the people talk about the Midwest in America like it's this terrible place. But I actually have a lot of respect for like general sort of American Midwest values. TV Manchete. That sounds awesome. That's a good name for a TV station to me. TV Manchete. Sounds like luchador. I am TV Manchete. Evildoers beware. Knights of the Zodiac? Cool. I love the luchador thing, by the way. I find it really, really fascinating. Because it is such a specific kind of a superhero. Particularly like the very cheap like luchador movie of the week kind of stuff. Not so much the like actual professional wrestlers, although a lot of them were. But not the wrestling side, just the pop entertainment side, because it's just such a specific thing, much like Sentai in Japan. It's just so fascinating to see those little things become just churned out like crazy. So there are just dozens and dozens of these luchador movies, all with more or less the same plot, more or less the same conceit, and kids just love them. Very interesting. And just a kind of superhero you do not see really in any other culture. That particular brand of, it's modern day. The hero fights crime and fights these very fantastical villains, but they aren't like sorcerers. The villains, they are mad scientists, but they're mad scientists who build like functioning androids, and who have mind control rays, like really far out fantasy science stuff. And there's some occasional fantasy stuff, mummies and things like that. But it's not like set in a fantasy world or set in the near future. And then the hero is almost always like a wrestler who fights bad guys, and generally doesn't have superpowers. He just fights for justice as a professional wrestler with a mask on, in public, with the blessing of the police department, often. And it's just not it's not Sentai, it's not G.I. Joe, it's not any of these patterns that we see in other cultures. Oh yeah, El Santo was a huge deal. El Santo was definitely a superstar, no question. Kamikaze Girls. The name rings a bell, but let me double check. I have not. Huh. That looks kind of interesting, actually. I have seen Love and Pop, which, if you want an interesting live action movie from Japan. Oh yeah, Tiger Mask. Tiger Mask is totally, luchador, Japanese luchador. And what's great, if you're interested in this stuff at all, the recent Tiger Mask anime from like 2 or 3 years ago is essentially like a cheesy 70s anime series just made in modern times. So it has like the exact like weird cutting and pacing and like awkward art of a 70s anime, but like it was made 3 years ago. And it's just really interesting to see them like really try to mimic that style of like 70s anime. Totally, yeah. Takahashi is definitely aimed at a teenage audience. Trying to think of any things that I think that don't feel like that. I think probably Maison Ikkoku is aimed at a slightly older audience. Certainly, they like college age, maybe. It's certainly still teenager, but like teenage, leaning into college years. Urusei Yatsura definitely Urusei Yatsura is probably aimed at a young teen audience. But yeah, I think everything else is aimed at that teens group. Yeah. Well, then there's that great thing where right after the Great Tohoku earthquake, um, somebody started giving school backpacks to kids anonymously and signing them Tiger Mask. And just all these backpacks started showing up at kids' houses, and they said, hey, and they said on them, because a lot of these kids, they had to leave their backpacks behind to, go, and these backpacks are expensive. They're once in a lifetime purchases. We're talking 500, $700 for these things. And some anonymous guy just started, buying them and sending them to people, and sending them your Tiger Mask, which I think was really, really awesome to give kids that idea that there are people looking out for them and that there are real superheroes. That's pretty awesome. Yeah, Inuyasha was definitely successful. It hit with the anime audience, and I think it did pretty well on Cartoon Network. I think it got a larger audience through that thing. And people were cosplaying it. It was definitely successful for a few years over here in America. But then it just kind of petered out. I think in Japan and America, I think that franchise just didn't really last that long. And I don't know if that was just kind of Takahashi tiring of it or what. But it certainly seemed to pull back. And it does feel like Inuyasha was kind of her attempt to make a shonen series. She wanted to do kind of her version of Dragon Ball. And that's definitely what Inuyasha was, or turned into. Unfortunately, because it kind of turned into, okay, this is a story that will never end. And then, ironically, it just kind of, went in that direction. And just kind of petered out. I don't know how that story ended, but I get the sense that they kind of dragged for a while, and then they finished things up kind of quickly. But, yeah. Which anime really broke out the anime, like, anime in America? Well, unless without going back to, like, 60s and 70s and 80s and such. So the way I like to say this, so in my mind, there are really kind of two phases of that. There's the anime that got big in the 90s without Cartoon Network, that really built the core anime fandom that then kind of supported that Cartoon Network, explosion. And those were things like Ranma, Ghost in the Shell movie, Akira, stuff like that. Then Cartoon Network came along, and I think the big successes there were, in a lot of ways, Dragon Ball. Dragon Ball Z was on TV before Cartoon Network. It was syndicated in a lot of places for years before Cartoon Network came along. And so people knew what it was, and that was, I think, one of the advantages Cartoon Network had, is that Dragon Ball Z already had excitement behind it, already had hype, it already had brand recognition in America, and now suddenly it was on. You know, it wasn't at 7:30 in the morning. It was more or less prime time, especially prime time by kids standards. And that was a big deal. You know, I think you know Cartoon Network made Dragon Ball Z a household name. I'll put it that way. But it already had some momentum behind it, and then it's become kind of just this thing everyone talks about all the time. Other than that, Gundam Wing certainly. There's no question that if anyone in America knows about Gundam, it is because Cartoon Network aired Gundam Wing back in the day. Um, let's see here. Other big ones. I think like Trigun and Cowboy Bebop were more successes within anime fandom. I don't think I don't think those got huge audiences through Cartoon Network. Hey Fisher, unfortunately I'm kind of running out of steam. We're kind of talking about what anime really uh, landed big in America and really helped to push the industry forward. Certainly those. Full Metal Alchemist was big because Full Metal Alchemist was a great intro anime. Something that you could show somebody else and they're like, oh, okay, these are vaguely European characters with a more or less episodic storyline, but then becomes more arc like over the course of the story, right? Yeah, I don't think Transformers. Transformers was an American cartoon, right? No one thought of that as anime. I'm trying to think of other like really huge hits for anime in America. As with anything, like there's a spectrum, right? There's stuff that was big but not huge. Lane did hit pretty big over here in America. Lane I think is the only anime series to ever have a convention's entire year themed around it. Sailor Moon, that you're absolutely right. Sailor Moon is a big one. Another example of a show that had plenty of momentum before Cartoon Network picked it up. It was on syndication a lot before Cartoon Network, but Cartoon Network definitely gave it certainly an extra life. Oh yeah, totally. And like I said, kind of ignoring that the first and second waves, which I consider to be like, so I think Astro Boy Gigantor was first wave, and then second wave was basically Robotech. And then after that, you get all the big stuff of the '90s, and you get that sort of that weird split of the anime fandom, and then the Cartoon Network fandom, basically. And the other like weird experiments where like Tech TV showed anime. Yeah, see, I love Wing with all my heart, in every sense of the word. I cannot not enjoy Gundam Wing. Gundam Wing is just, oh my gosh. Yeah, I can't not love that show. Yeah, JoJo's never been big in America, but then the 2012 really got, well, and the thing about JoJo is it's extremely memeable. So I think JoJo just, people started doing gifs of JoJo, and that was just how that was how it got his fandom. His folks were like, "Oh my gosh, have you seen this thing?" Um, I saw Gundam Thunderbolt like October Sky, and not my kind of Gundam. Too grimdark for me. Um, oh yeah, totally. Some anime released Laserdisc only because that was an excellent format. That was a really high quality format, and folks were like, "Why wouldn't we do this?" It was the Blu-ray of its time, and so folks just jumped into that. Interesting. Fighting game community did some JoJo stuff. Yeah. Were there like JoJo's fighting games, or were the games licensed, or were the characters licensed in other games, or were they part of that? Whatever's the name of that. There's some fan fighting game where they put in like every anime character ever, are all in this one fighting game. Ah, JoJo fighting game. Gotcha. Huh. Did not realize that. This is what I love about anime fandom. Um, the whole just is infinitely deep. There is always more stuff to find at the about all of these things. There's just no end to all of the the origins, the histories, and the connections. Mugen. That's it. One of these days I'll download and play that. I'll find it somewhere because that just looks like a whole bunch of fun to have. Um, you know, Haruhi Suzumiya fighting Tetsuo, right, or whatever. Just complete craziness. That sounds very streamable too. I'm surprised it didn't stream more, unless it gets blocked by Twitch for some reason. Like, there's okay. I gotta look at this up now. Um, People are playing Mugen right now on Twitch. It looks like. Maybe. I see 4 streams under Mugen. Maybe that's a person. I can't tell. Can't tell. Yeah, I'd stream some Mugen if I had other people to play with. Yeah, that's the one of the weird things. People get into anime through characters, like not the characters in the show, but just like literally just the visual style of a character will sell people on a show. And they may not even like the show, but they'll become fans of the franchise just purely through the visual style of the characters. Isn't that an interesting thing? Um, Little like Barbie, actually, based on this documentary where folks were like, you have girls were like, I like Barbie because she's pretty, and I want to play with a pretty thing. Like, that makes sense. It's actually an interesting thing. Um, so back in the 50s, not anime related at all actually, but so back in the 50s, when girls wanted to play with things, really the other than like plastic horses and plastic things like that, girls' playthings were divided into sort of 2 categories. Um, Dress up dolls, so little cardboard or literally usually just paper dolls. So a paper person with paper outfits that you kind of fold over to dress them. And then dolls, which are usually like baby dolls, right? They weren't, they were all infants that you were taking care of. And one of the creators of Barbie was like, why can't my child have a doll that she can dress up? Like, those 2 things make sense. And that's where the Barbie doll came from. Although it was based on Barbie is actually based on essentially like a German Playboy character. So there was this magazine in Germany that had these very saucy comic strips in it about this voluptuous blonde girl and the various situations she got into, and the various men that she went home with, so to speak. And they produced a doll of her in Germany. And one of the creators of Barbie was in Germany, and she saw this doll, and she's like, "That's what I want." Like those visually, that character and those dimensions and all those things. So she bought a bunch, brought them over to America, and we're like, we're gonna make this doll based on this character. Well, not based on the character, but based on the doll itself, the figurine. And so then they tweak things around. Like they obviously change things quite a bit. But that was the inspiration for Barbie, oddly enough. Oh, that's totally true. Yes, Toho is all about the characters, not so much about the games or anything else. It's all about those things. To quote the guy who runs, was it JS List? Anyway, it says if I ever come across an anime image, like fan art, and I have no idea what's going on, I know it must be Toho, because Toho is just this incomprehensible fandom of characters where they just throw people together, and it's like, oh, okay, I guess those characters are doing that thing. Right, yeah, and then you get the Bleach, Naruto, One Piece, the trifecta, and those definitely just blew up in the 2000s, and brought in just that huge market, huge audience. What anime US magazines? They're all dead. That was fun for a hot minute when we had them, but US anime magazines are a thing of the past, sadly. Naruto hype has died off? In what universe? You kidding? They're selling as much Naruto now as they ever were. Naruto's huge. Bleach has died off. Now, obviously, I consider Boruto to be part of the Naruto franchise, right? Yeah, you're right. Death Note was, for a lot of people. A lot of people believe that Death Note was like the ideal anime. People would get other people into anime through Death Note. And they were like, oh yeah, it's the perfect like first anime for people. And I do not think Death Note is the perfect first anime for people. So certainly people get into anime through Death Note. It's not it's not a horrible introduction to anime, but it got a lot of folks in, which I think is weird because Death Note is not a typical anime series. Granted, Dragon Ball Z is not a typical anime series. Heck, Naruto, One Piece, not typical anime series. Just really, really big. I don't like the characters in Death Note. I really do not care about the fate of those characters, which is why I dropped it, because I was like, this is a really neat idea, but I do not want to spend any time with these people. So that is a problem. I'm gonna need to just set the focus on this and just leave it, and not have it autofocus, because autofocus is just not working at all. Yeah. Yeah, light was a big deal. Death Note was a big deal. It was the hotness for a while. And you get those weird flash in the pans, Black Heaven, that folks just were just blown away with for like a week, and then no one ever talked about it again. Very odd. Yeah, no, but yeah, no, absolutely. Death Note was a really big deal. Yeah. All right, we've been going about an hour and a half. I am running out of steam, unfortunately. But thank you all so much for stopping by. So tomorrow I am planning on doing an anime club. I think we are going to do some Eccentric Family. Because Eccentric Family I want to watch more of. And it's a gorgeously animated series. And it's generally sort of a light comedy. And I think it's going to be a fun ride. So we'll watch like a few like middle episodes of Eccentric Family tomorrow. Huh. And my Echo is now telling me to go to bed. And that'll be the plan. And then probably next week we'll start doing Ergo Proxy. And finishing out Ergo Proxy. So that's the plan. Thank you all so much for joining me. As always, this is a great time. I'm very glad you guys can join me. And more fun stuff coming. So hopefully I can see you all tomorrow for that. If not, more stuff. So until then, watch more anime.